let's get started. We may have some more people joining us, but we'll go right to work here. I'm Paul Costello. I'm the Executive Director of the Council on Rural Development, and we're managing these forums for the Local Support and Community Action Team of the Governor's Recovery Task Force. Governor Scott, when he built the recovery effort, he divided his team into three parts. And the first part was really looking at the immediate financial needs of recovery. And he built a team that of real lead investors who helped businesses think about how to apply for PPP, how to receive other benefits, how to gear up, how to deal with crises, how to go to the bank when you needed to. And that team's been incredibly effective. Obviously, the state of Vermont has received more PPP dollars per capita, I think, than any other place in the country. The second group was really looking at the step-by-step reopening of businesses. What are the protocols? How do we look at our downtowns? What are the fiscal interim needs? And that group had a lot to advise the governor on in the first couple of months. Our local support and community action team is really looking at the long haul, and it also has a different focus. When the governor built the three, he knew that not all the answers to recovery and resilience are going to come from Washington, D.C. or even Montpelier, Vermont. In fact, people are stepping up all over the state as they are in Caledonia County. People are helping their neighbors. Businesses are helping each other. They're thinking creatively. Community organizations, regional development, Northeast Kingdom Collaborative, and other groups are rallying forward in any number of ways to move their communities and counties forward. And in fact, there's so much richness happening on the ground that the governor thought it would be really important for people to share in a crosswise way what they're doing, rather than think that the answers are top down. So we're glad to host this Caledonia County Forum, and it's an honor to be here with everyone on the line. I want to introduce Catherine from Catherine Sims from the Collaborative, just to say a word of welcome.
Hey folks, delighted and honored to be here with VCRD and NBDA and really all of you to have the opportunity to listen and hear from you about the challenges that we're facing and the opportunities to move our region towards recovery. So really looking forward to listening and learning from all of you and working together to create a vision for how we move forward.
Thanks so much, Catherine, and thanks for your helper. And then we have from NBDA, Dave Snedeker, who's a great old friend of ours and so active in the kingdom. David?
Thanks, Paul, and welcome, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the director of the Northeastern Vermont Development Association, and we're the Regional Planning Commission and Development Corporation for the Northeast Kingdom. And a lot of times we're going to be involved in helping implement the solutions that we come up with to help our communities and economy moving forward. So like Catherine and VCRD and Community Action Team, we're happy to hear everybody's perceptions of the challenges facing our communities and ideas for getting back on course. So thanks.
So our plan tonight, thanks, David. Our plan for tonight is really to go into some depth on a couple of issues. We built a steering committee to frame these processes for the full Northeast Kingdom, knowing that there's a lot of ties between each county and a lot of organizations that work between the counties. That group identified the forum topics for the Northeast Kingdom. And tonight we're going to have forums on local food systems and food access, and then another on cultural and civic institutions, everything from the arts to nonprofits to NYU. And we'll look forward to thinking with you all in those areas. The idea of these forums is really about a couple of functions. One is to share best practices from outside the region, from other counties, from other communities. What are some of the interesting things that are happening elsewhere that could be learned from or copied or used in the kingdom? And then we want to gather those same things from you all and think about what Caledonia County is doing that's unique, what some of your communities are doing that are interesting, that we can beg, steal, and borrow and share with other communities throughout the state. We're also looking at how those the work that's happening on the ground and the creativity of Vermonter adds up in ways that could inform the governor and could also inform public policy as we move forward in COVID recovery. We know this isn't going to be an immediate recovery. You know, when this started, many people looked for a 2-month window. We're now looking at 6 months, and we may be looking for certainly over a year till we're in a full recovery. So we're going to need to work together. The other purpose of the forum is to listen and to reflect with members of our visiting team who have expertise from outside the state, working closely with the congressional staff, with the Agency of Commerce and others to provide technical assistance and support for local efforts, knowing that Dave and Catherine are already pretty connected to those folks, but that projects may spring up in all kinds of ways that could use advice, connection, and support. The agenda for tonight, in terms of the layout of the meeting, is that we'll go into breakouts, and in each breakout we'll have a discussion of some of the creative practices going on in other places. We'll think about what we want for our community, what you're trying to accomplish in this arena for the future of the county or your community, what's holding you back, what some of the challenges are, and then what are the promising practices, strategies, and programs emerging today that could be useful and that could also inform other regions. And then finally, what else is needed? What are some of the actions needed locally, regionally, or statewide to address these challenges? What kind of technical assistance, what kind of funding might be necessary to answer the challenges that you're facing? The two arenas that we're going to talk about are local food systems and food access, and then cultural and civic institutions. And I'm going to invite Nick Kramer to describe how we go to these breakout sessions. Well, welcome everyone. This is the session on food systems and food security. Really great to have you all with us. I kind of walked through the way the agenda is going to work in the larger group. We really want to hear some of the ideas of creative work that's happening outside of Caledonia County to start, knowing that a lot of you are doing really good work there. And we're really interested and excited to hear from you all. But we'll start with Sarah Danley from Vermont Farm to Plate, who's going to share.
Paul?
Yes, Jenny.
Are you able to make me the co-host? I want to get Kingdom Access ability to record.
Oh, yes.
Before we get into that.
And to do that, I go to your icon.
Yep, if you look at my video, there'll be 3 dots that come up. And if you hit those 3 dots, it should say make co-host.
I already did it.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Jenny. So Sarah, we'd love to hear your perspective on some of the good practices going on for recovery in the food systems and for food access. And really appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. So I'm the Vermont Farm to Plate Network Manager, which is a collective impact organization that, well, not organizations, a network of over 300 organizations that work statewide. And I am the staff point person for our food access work. And we have a long running project on helping communities do local food system, food access projects. So I am happy to be here and just to share a little bit about what we've been seeing. As you all know, hunger has obviously been skyrocketing since COVID, but COVID has also shown the enormous potential to expand food access through partnerships with local producers. And it's also really emphasized the importance of building a more resilient food system. So I'm really happy to say that we've seen a huge outburst of energy around the state of communities. And when I say communities, I mean municipal governments, community groups, nonprofits, farms themselves, collaboratives of farms, coming together to tackle food access while also strengthening our local food system. So I am going to cheat a little bit and give a couple of examples, quick examples, but I'd like to also group them into 3 buckets: assessment projects, planning projects, and action projects. So some communities already knew what was needed, or it was just very clear what was needed in the most urgent response and are jumping into action. That's what I mean by action projects. By planning projects, I mean that some communities that we're seeing and talking to are taking the opportunity to do some strategic planning for the long-term future of the local food system. And in order to do that planning really effectively, the first step is an assessment of the current needs and opportunities. So one example of an assessment project that I wanted to share with you is the towns of Hancock, Rochester, and Granville down in sort of the upper, it's like the outskirts of the Upper Valley. And it's actually interesting. One of the reasons they chose to take this work on is because they're in a black hole between several common geographic designations. So they're in a little bit of a black hole between several service areas. They had already been thinking about food access before COVID hit. So once it did, it became a priority of the town's joint pandemic response team. So what they're doing is they actually were able to connect with 2 graduate students from a nearby school who are conducting a really thorough food security assessment. And then after that, they'll try and move on to the planning phase. One of my favorite examples, and I'm happy to give more detail on any of these later on or by email, but one of my favorite examples of a planning project is in the St. Albans area. So a number of years ago, a coalition of several regional organizations, including the Regional Planning Commission, the Regional Medical Center, South Hero Land Trust, the Workforce Investment Board, and the Industrial Development Corporation all came together and decided to found the Healthy Roots Collaborative, which eventually became housed under the Regional Planning Commission. So last year, actually pre-COVID, they partnered with the City of St. Albans and successfully applied for a federal technical assistance program, which got them federal and state assistance through a community planning session. The plan was completed and resulted in action steps such as strengthening the local distribution system to provide food to both local businesses and to the charitable food system. So by going through that process, they had the plan ready and are now ready to move into action in response to COVID with a lot of backing on the best way to do it. And I will also note that regional planning commissions can be a key partner in this type of planning project. And here in the Northeast Kingdom, you guys actually have a Northeast Kingdom food system plan, and NVDA is really interested in helping communities do this work. So they're a wonderful resource. Finally, there are an incredible amount of really inspiring action projects in the state, both pre-COVID and especially now that COVID has hit. So it was hard to pick one to highlight, but I'm going to highlight Willie's Variety Store, which is down in Bennington. So Willie's is a corner store which is located in an official food desert. And when the owners began accepting WIC benefits, they realized they really wanted to serve their community and be able to provide more options for fresh food. They actually successfully got a grant to purchase a new produce cooler and do some other improvements to their space. And then they immediately established a partnership with a local farm to get the ground beef for that cooler. So the ground beef from this local farm has been extremely popular. They are able to move everything that the farm gives them. And they're now looking at partnering with other local farms too. So it's a wonderful example of how a relatively small investment is not only providing more food access for an underserved community, but is also this brand new market for local producers. And so finally, I'll just note that it was really hard picking these examples, and we're actually building a data of these type of community food resilience projects around the state. I can pop the link in our chat. Our website just went live. It's only the first batch is published so far, but eventually there'll be a couple of dozen. And we would love to learn about more projects, but we also do already have a really robust internal list. So if any of you are interested in hearing if there's examples of a specific type of project, feel free to email me and we might have that in the back end already.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really great. I know that there'll be a lot that will resonate in the conversation, and we'll look for your advice and thinking as we go. It's terrific to have a small group here, and I'm wondering if we could just go around really quickly and say who we are and if we represent an organization or we're here as an individual. And I'll start. Paul Costello, Council on Rural Development. Ivy, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I'm Ivy Enoch. I am now in week 2 as a food security specialist for Hunger Free Vermont. So I am representing Hunger Free, but I'm very new to my position. So I am here really in a listening capacity to hear about the challenges and solutions kind of facing the Caledonia County and see how Hunger Free, particularly our hunger councils, can be of any help or serve as a resource. So really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivy. Jenny?
I'm Jenny Lavoie. I work for the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is part of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and we're part of this action team.
Yes. John?
Hi, everybody. I'm John Ramsey, the Executive Director for the Center for an Ag Economy here in Hardwick. And we are a food systems organization, and a lot of our work around COVID has been, I guess, in the action category. helping to facilitate several projects and partnerships around the state and the Northeast Kingdom.
Yeah, well, we look forward to learning more about those. Eric?
Hi, my name's Eric Recchia. I am a Pathways intern with, oh, sorry.
Wow.
The mic can be loud. I'm a Pathways intern for the Center for Rural Development. Excuse me, not Center for Rural, USDA Rural Development. And I'm here in the capacity of a note taker. So once again, just listening and helping to store the conversation for future reference.
Thank you. Polly?
Hi, I'm Polly Major. I cover nutrition and a range of human service topics for Senator Leahy, and I'm part of this visiting team.
Thanks. Angela? You're muted, Angela. Do you want to just introduce yourself?
I'm Angela Rutherford. I'm just here as an individual.
Great to have you with us. Laurel?
Hi, Laurel Ruggles. I work at Northeastern Vermont Regional Hospital in St. Johnsbury. I'm one of the co-chairs on the Northeast Kingdom Hunger Council, and also a co-chair of the Well Nourished Collaborative Action Network for NEK Prosper.
Great. Great to have you with us. Chris? Chris's iPad too?
Hi, this is Chris Coville. I'm from Craftsbury and part of a sort of seat of your pants neighbor to neighbor startup in Craftsbury, trying to keep people fed and well cared for in our area.
Wonderful. And then is it Heather at 1843?
Director for the Department of Health.
Okay, thank you, Heather. And Kingdom Access TV is with us and they're recording tonight, so thank you all. Let's go to the first question on our list, which is, what are you looking and working for when you look at food systems and food access in Caledonia County? I know the Center for an Ag Economy has some big picture goals, and we'd be glad to hear those, but do other people have goals as well? How have you framed it, John? What's the future of food systems?
Well, I think part of it is building infrastructure that allows us to support some of the food access and food security needs that the community is going to have in the future, and that dovetails, I think, very well with what some of the farmers' needs are as they pivot and change their production practices over time. If you think about dairy farms, they have not had to invest in long-term storage because they have a milk truck come every other day and pick up their milk. But if a farm is going to switch to produce or meat or other things, we have a growing season that we have to deal with here in the Northeast Kingdom, and we need to be able to store those, those farm commodities, and similarly, we're finding that some of our local stores, like the Buffalo Mountain Co-op, as an example, they are also struggling with storage, similar to our Hardwick area food pantry. So we see an alignment there around growing markets and accessing new markets for farmers, and an alignment with food security needs of the community, and an alignment of some of what those infrastructure needs are for the future. It's been very interesting to sort of see that come together over the last 4 months as producers and folks who are working to address food security issues. Seeing those sort of needs align has been very interesting from our vantage point.
Mm-hmm. Great. Other folks have a perspective on where the food system needs to go in Caledonia County? Or some of the challenges getting there?
I agree with the piece about food storage and like long-term storage and thinking about how collectively we think about storing food for emergency situations, like possibly community root cellars, those sorts of things.
Terrific. Other folks have perspectives of goals or a vision forward for the kingdom and food systems? Are there significant issues of hunger in Caledonia County?
Yeah, we're seeing the Hardwick Area Food Pantry, has sort of really expanded its programming, and here we have the Vermont Food Venture Center, and we've used this facility to help them store additional food, so they could take in larger quantities. There were a few situations that I heard about early on where larger facilities that could handle larger volumes of food at once were being prioritized over smaller food access sites like the Hardwick Food Pantry. And for rural communities, that's a real issue. And so to help with that situation, we said yes, we would store food here for them if needed. And right now they have food in our freezer. But that's a scary thing when communities are being prioritized like that because of shortages and infrastructure challenges. I think similar, there were sort of larger food distributors that were making similar sort of comments to the co-op here in Hardwick. And again, they were sort of looking to us around the storage issue. We're seeing more and more farms interested in connecting directly with consumers. We have some farms in the community here that have initiated their own home delivery service. We have a farm here in Hardwick that's a beef and pork producer that's partnering with a few other farms to deliver products directly to people's homes. And I think we're sort of in learning what the long-term way people access food is. Is it really going to be delivery services and everybody ordering through Amazon? And if that's the case, how do we fit local food into it, and how do we support local producers? What's sustainable for producers, I think is a question as we sort of go through additional phases of COVID. I worry a little bit about our producers sort of being in situations where there are some that are doing really, really well, and then others who aren't. The producers who not every farmer has the capacity to grow really great food and also market themselves in a way that connects directly with customers. You might have some amazing farmers who grow amazing food, but their strength is not marketing themselves. And so I worry a little bit about, like a boom bust scenario happening with some of our producers, where some are, really struggling while others are doing exceptionally well. How do we sort of balance that out so it's a sustainable situation for our farms? That's a goal.
Is CAE helping farmers with like some collective distribution or marketing, or are you advising farmers as well?
All of the above.
Are you? And has COVID interrupted you look like you're at CAE right now. And how are you guys doing? Are you riding a financial balance point, or are you struggling, or how's it look? It's complicated, right?
Yeah, it is.
Your finances.
Well, I mean, we saw, I think, you know, similar to a lot of people, we saw sort of some immediate philanthropic support out there. And now, for instance, you know, Chris is on this call, and I would love for her to speak to it a little bit. You know, we've been doing a meals program here in Hardwick, and I would love for Chris to talk about what Craftsbury and Albany is doing. And we decided that we would collaborate, and as a collaboration, we could potentially access some of the larger grant funds that are available for through the Everyone Eats grant program that the state is just put out an RFP on.
Mm-hmm.
So financially, we're finding some resources, but it's the long term that I'm concerned about, because some of those philanthropic dollars aren't going to be there in the future. We know that.
Chris, do you want to tell us about the Everyone Eats project?
Sure. And I'll start by saying you had asked a question about hunger in Caledonia. We're not actually in Caledonia. We're, you know, we kind of meet at the Four Corners place. And so we are Orleans County, but we kind of are in the same school district with Hardwick. So, yes. But you asked about hunger, and I could, just from my perspective, what I'm seeing, we do a pop-up food pantry every Thursday in Craftsbury, and we've consistently had like 70 households accessing that, either through delivery or through pickup. It started to go down, like we got even into the 50s, and then with the 600 drop-off, it skyrocketed to 80 the last 2 weeks consistently. So, and when we talk to people when they come, and some of this was here before, and so for whatever reason, they aren't necessarily making ends meet, either on fixed incomes or whatever. And they also aren't necessarily traveling very far to try to access the resources available for whatever reason. So it's definitely here. I think it's here to stay for a long time. Anyway, so what the collaboration we're doing with the CAE and the Hardwick group, and also with Albany, because we kind of, our food pantry, kind of emergency food pantries we popped up, it made sense for us to collaborate with Albany because they lacked resources and the organization right off the bat. And they're like a food desert out there. They don't have a store. They're way far from their food bank, which is in Newport. So we've been like working together where we plan for 100 households, and our food bank is on Thursday, and whatever we don't move through moves up to their food pantry, which is on Saturday. And they see a big range of people. But both of us have also had this meal situation going on where our community supper morphed into a weekly soup supper, which is a little bit simpler meal every Monday. And we have been keeping that going since about mid-March, totally on volunteers, totally on donated food. So what this new program does for us, if we can get the grant along with with Hardwick and Albany, is it allows us to bring money into our economy. All of a sudden, we can pay the people making the meals. We can buy the vegetables and the meat and the dairy that we're using. I mean, farmers, myself included, have been happy to donate. I mean, we don't want to see our food go to waste either, and we'd rather feed people, but we also were expecting an income from that.
Yeah.
So
what kind of a farmer are you, Chris?
We grow vegetables and mushrooms, and until just recently raise organic beef. We just ran out of beef for the time being.
Great. So
Paul,
people think Craftsbury is a very prosperous, tidy little community, but this is everywhere.
Yes, it is.
Was it Laurel?
Yeah,
Someone wanna-
yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm not sure that are people hungry is the only question. I think it's, do they have enough money to buy food, and healthy food
Mhm,
is the bigger question.
mhm.
Um, yeah, so I don't want to just focus on just are people hungry? I think there's less people that are hungry, more people who are having trouble having the resources to buy, the food that's really nourishing and the right kind of food for them. The other thing I want to throw out there when you're talking about a food system, and I forgot to mention another affiliation that I have with the Northeast Kingdom Food Cycle Coalition, where just all of the waste in food, and there's lots of food out there. It's just, what can we do to make sure that we're getting food to the people who need it?
Mhm. Thank you for that, Laura. Other perspectives on goals and visions forward, or obstacles that you're facing right now before we start to kind of list some of the best practices going on in the kingdom? Is there more to the vision of what folks want to be accomplishing around food systems? And is there more around the obstacles?
Well, one obstacle that I think we're unfortunately going to run into is that we've been participating in the Abbey Group's food box program, Farmers Feeding Families, and we've been sourcing and packing about 5,000 pounds a week here. And Chris has been receiving some of those boxes for her community and other communities through the Northeast Kingdom, and we've been able to source, that 5,000 pounds of local produce from small and medium-sized farms in the area. And I know that Senator Leahy and Senator Sanders and Congressman Welch are all working on this issue, but it seems as though that some of the new regulations that the USDA is coming out with is going to prohibit us from sourcing from certified organic, small and medium-sized producers in the area, which really stinks. We're really disappointed with that. I don't think that the final determination has come yet, but in terms of when you say, what are some of the challenges, Paul? It's that sort of, we're putting really good, healthy food out there, and we're packing it in a food safe facility, and we're distributing it on refrigerated trucks, and we're but to have sort of the one size fits all regulation,
That's so
that's disappointing and a challenge.
Yeah.
And
Thanks,
I know that the Congress in our delegation, I think, has done an amazing job trying to rally support to change that. I know, so I don't want to say that without saying the other part too.
That's okay. Chris.
I would say that slaughterhouse facilities continues to be a challenge. There are a lot, I think we're backed up 2 years right now in our slaughter facilities in the area. And that doesn't make it really possible for us to be self-sufficient on meat right now. So that's another area.
How many slaughter facilities are there in the Northeast Kingdom?
John, do you know?
Yeah, there's Bros Market in Troy, which is a state inspected facility, and they actually have started to slaughter animals and bring wholes and halves down to Phil Brown and Glover, who is now in an inspected facility. And then there's Northeast Kingdom Processing, and I might be forgetting a smaller facility, but
yeah.
But I'm also a meat producer too, and yeah, I am booked out slaughter dates until January of 2022.
Cows that aren't born yet. That's so, John? Are you booking out for cows that you don't have yet, John?
They would have been, they're calves on their mothers right now.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. Well, that's a huge limit point for the meat industry, obviously, up there.
Well, and we're seeing a number of dairy farms interested in transitioning and diversifying into meat too.
Yeah.
There are more beef producers in Hardwick than dairy farms by far.
Is that right? And they're all dependent on this little slice of production capacity that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. Are there other goals? So it sounds like to infer on this, having more storage space is an important direction. Strengthening the capacity that you have and the income that can come to farmers from the food that's given away is important. Slaughter facility is important to allow the expansion of meat production in the kingdom. Are there other things that are kind of essential to I know that the Center for an Ag Economy has sort of a symbol of a circle, and how all the links of that circle have to work effectively for the food systems to be optimized in the region. And are there other gaps in the circle of food production in the Northeast Kingdom right now? Or deficits like the price of milk, which is a fundamental challenge to dairy farmers right now.
I have a question from just different things I've been hearing here, and I don't know if something like this exists, but I know several farmers, and from what I've heard here, it is true that not all farmers are marketers. Is there, or could there be perhaps some sort of central contact that if farmers excess or want to help, like if there's like a point of contact that they could say, I have these foods, they're either going to go bad or, I want to help. Is there some sort of contact so that it kind of takes it off of the farmer to have to market themselves?
I think what you're talking about is maybe like a food, like some sort of a central label or something where smaller farms could like feed into, and then they'd have enough to sell kind of on.
Or even like if, people are doing meal prep and they have excess that they want to donate. I just think that if there was more of a group or a contact that farmers, that aren't interested in just going it alone would maybe be interested. I just don't know if there's anything like that.
There's some work like that. John, you want to describe the Fresh Cut program and how that works? That's going strong still?
We initiated a program where we source produce from multiple small farms, and then we prepare it for easy use in institutional kitchens. And when COVID hit, all of those accounts just shut down. So we signed contracts with our farms, and we have 180,000 pounds worth of contracts signed with farms this year to buy produce. And so what we've done is redirect a lot of that to food security needs. But in the bigger picture, it is a way in which 20 farms can sort of all collectively market under one sort of brand and access a market that no one single one of those farms could access, because there isn't one farm of those that's going to provide UVM dining and UVM medical with 50,000 pounds of potatoes in a year. So it's a way to sort of aggregate and do that. Another great model, and there are farms in Caledonia County that are a part of it, is Deep Root Co-op. So Deep Root Co-op is based in Johnson, but there's producers here in Hardwick, in other parts of the state, in other parts of Caledonia County, and they collectively market products together in a way that reduces competition amongst those farms. So a lot of those farms have their own independent CSAs and farm stands, but the co-op will contract with farms to, a certain farm will grow onions, and a certain farm will grow cabbage, and a certain farm will, do something else. And it's a way in which, again, farms can sort of aggregate and deliver to a larger market than they could on their own. And I think, models like Deeproot, I think, could be replicated in other segments of the farm economy.
John, do they have storage too?
They do. They do have some storage in Johnson, yeah, they're a close partner of ours.
Great. Other perspectives on the goal for the food system in the kingdom or some of the current challenges? I see Eloise has joined the call.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Eloise.
I had another meeting, so I'm just joining in.
Okay, it's great to have you on. We can't see you, but well, we know you're there.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
Okay. So Eloise, we're talking about goals for the food systems, some of the things that are holding us back. And at this point, we could talk about, are there promising practices, strategies, or programs that are emerging today in your, when you've started to tell us some of the way that fresh cut, for example, is being diverted into food security and supporting people. But are there other creative things that are going on with farms to support them or in distribution of foods that are helping communities right now in terms of the response effort?
Okay, you're asking me that? No, that's the question.
Yeah, I'm asking everyone, but if you want to take a stab, Eloise, we're glad to have you share.
That's all right. I was curious about that meeting because of the thing we've been doing in Craftsbury with the general store and other businesses, and it seemed like it's such a need, and the need's just gonna keep. We need to address that need, and so we've been doing this free weekly bag of food in Craftsbury in Albany. And we started with just Peace Green donating some vegetable, and then we soon realized that the need were much bigger, and then we did some fundraising, and luckily we've been having good success with the fundraising, just like privately doing fundraising, and but yeah, so that's been going on for many months now, and it's gonna keep happening. Yeah.
Now, who's doing that work, Eloise, and who's raising the funds?
So it's like Emily Meckler, Pete, Hannah person from Albany, Vicky Strong's been helping out, Chris Colville. So there's like a little group, and then we just send an email to the people that have been donating money when we need more money, and they've been like really supporting us in that way. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But we just realized that there was such a need even before the COVID crisis, and and we're serving right now about more than 100 families. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. What else is going on in the county that are interesting models that could inform other places in Vermont, or that you see as, or that you're proud of, or that people are stepping up to do?
One thing I was going to mention is that so another great partner of ours is Green Mountain Farm to School, and they operate a program called Green Mountain Farm Direct, and we do aggregation and distribution for them. And there's been a couple of buying clubs that have been set up. There's actually one in Peacham. And so the idea is that local volunteers aggregate orders through the Green Mountain Farm Direct website, and then we aggregate and then deliver that food to the town, and the volunteers distribute that food to members in the community that they know are in need. And so it sort of is a system where early on in COVID, it was a little bit active than it is right now because when we were under the stay-at-home order, it was utilized by people who could not leave their home, or were at high risk, or didn't have a car. Transportation has revealed itself to be a huge challenge for a lot of people in terms of accessing food, especially in rural places. There are some members of our community who, for getting to the food pantry is actually like a real challenge. So the buying clubs is a way in which the town volunteers and the town emergency committees could deploy themselves. They could sort of aggregate the orders and then receive the food, and then they did the door-to-door deliveries without our trucks having to sort of go all over the back roads. But it was, yeah, and I think it's still, I think we have there's a buying club in Island Pond, and I forget another community. And again, I think it was a little more active when COVID first hit than it is now, but it certainly filled a need in some of those towns.
Boy, it sounds like the old first co-ops in Vermont when they were organized, but this is mostly fresh produce, John?
Yeah, so we're able to, basically get the essentials, meat, eggs, produce, bread, dairy products, and yeah, not able to offer everything, but certainly a good amount of diversity of local food.
That's terrific.
So Paul,
Yes,
this
Chris.
is Laurel again. G. Van Gogh is a partnership between the Vermont Food Bank and hospitals and also schools in the state. And we've been doing it at our hospital. This is our 4th year. And it's usually produce. What they've been doing this since COVID hit is we've also been getting, the people that have been coming have been getting a lot of the same stuff that's in the farm to families, produce boxes and dairy. And last time they got some frozen chicken as well. And it's, people have to come to the hospital to get it, but they seem to be, it's just a really good atmosphere. And, and what they tell me is they like the atmosphere. I've seen over the years where new friendships have formed and old friendships have rekindled. They meet people that they knew from high school or something, from 40 years ago. And it's a really nice atmosphere. We've been doing it outside rather than inside since COVID hit, since March. And they've also been doing it at the schools, and it's also very popular there. And people pick up for their friends and family and neighbors. They pick up as many as 6 or 7 or 8 families and spread it around. So they've sort of figured that out over the years. The other thing that we're doing and other hospitals do is with the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps, the Healthcare Shares Program, which is a CSA program, and it's really targeted for people who are food insecure. And we're doing that for the 2nd year now. North Country Hospital's done it for quite a few years.
Their headquarters in Richmond, and then they deliver it to you and you distribute it?
Yeah, I think they have a farm up in Orleans County somewhere too as well.
Okay.
It's beautiful, beautiful locally grown produce.
I used to work with UICC, and I know that they partner with different farmers throughout the state, and they like rent or share fields with them, and then they have youth teams that produce produce on those fields. So it's not just in Richmond, but like Laurel was saying, they actually do have different farm parcels throughout the state that they use for that program.
Great, thanks, Eric. Chris, you had your hand up.
Well, I don't know if it's happening in throughout the state, but this, when we put together the pop-up food pantry, we saw the need for the deliveries as really important to get food to people that were essentially unable to or afraid to leave their homes because of their health concerns. But I hope that's something that will stay, like, because like the food bank in Hardwick also picked that up and started then doing a delivery system. And I think sometimes that is one of the things that keep people from accessing the food that is available for them. So whether or not that's going on in other places of the state, I don't know, but that's something I am feeling really good about our area, because like, I'm sorry, the woman that just was speaking, but about neighbors picking up for their neighbors, we have volunteers that are delivering, but we also have people that are coming and picking up for everyone on their road, you know, like, so we have like, we end up having pre-prepared bags for like about 8 different individuals now that are coming for 4 different families are coming, you know, and that I think is an amazing thing. And I think it is a way to get over some of those food access humps, whether it's comfort or whether it's transportation. But that whole delivery system of getting food to people in their homes, I think, is something that's been helpful here.
Yeah, and I think this is Laurel again. I think an organization that has become an expert in this since the pandemic is the Northeast Kingdom Council on Aging. All of their congregate meal sites shut down, and they went from, and I only know from hearing updates from them on other calls. I'm not personally involved in that system, but from delivering 9,000 meals around the kingdom to like almost 25,000. That's 25,000 meals around the kingdom because all the meal sites shut down. And they have well over 100 volunteers now, and they had to do that really, really quickly, and they had to form new partnerships in order to be able to make the meals. And I think we could all learn when we have a chance to, you know, catch our breath from this, really learn from their experiences and how they were able to do that so quickly and what worked and what didn't.
That's a huge scale. Are the food shelves are open now, or are some of them still closed?
None of the congregate meal sites are open yet.
Oh, okay.
The senior meal sites are not.
But food shelves
they had Meals on Wheels, but they went from 9,000 to 25,000 meal deliveries to make sure that the seniors got fed.
Yeah, one of the things that we heard was early on in COVID challenge was that that food shelves were actually not seeing much of an increase in take. You know, people didn't go, that there was especially people who are newly out of work or were really facing this for the first time. There was a sense of stigma and didn't necessarily want to go to those places. They didn't want to think of themselves as people who needed the food shelf. But when there was the food distribution with USDA and the packaged boxes of military foods and so forth, we had in central Vermont 1,600 people and families waiting in their cars at the airport to receive food that way. Is the stigma that it sounds like people are doing a number of different kinds of distributions and meals, maybe to get over some of that stigma and work with different populations of people. Does anyone want to talk about sort of the cultural side of the challenge?
Well, I guess I just find that in my community that if someone says, hey, I'm going down to pick up at the Thursday food distribution, do you want me to pick up for you, or do you want to come along? That it just, people are starting to realize that there's a lot of people in this new boat that is here. And so I think it's that sort of almost that personal invite that is seeming to work for us. Like,
yeah, and it has one person mentioned that with the 2 weeks ago, with the ending of the $600 bonus in unemployment checks, since that went away, has there been a kind of corresponding boost in food insecurity and needs? Have people seen that?
Absolutely. Yes. I had 80 people today and 80 people last week.
Is that
And
Craftsbury?
yeah. Yeah. Those are the highest numbers we've seen.
Do anyone else have more to say on that, or is that just ring true?
Yeah, I think it's, I only have anecdotal. You hear that. I don't have any, proof of it for sure. It could definitely make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What else is going on in terms of the way that the food system is going? I know, John, that you folks are providing technical assistance and strategic advice to farmers in a regular way. You've also had an amazing and major development project in the works with the Yellow Barn project. And have some of your services like that stalled, or are you still working, in line with the goals of the CAE to support job creation, economic activity, value-added development throughout the region? How does that feel these days?
Well, I mean, specific to our technical assistance providers, they've been straight out providing support to farms to help them figure out their pivot as a result of COVID, and then help them navigate the federal relief programs and help them sign up. I mean, there's a number of farms that just fly under the radar and are eligible for federal relief programs, but they're not plugged in. You know what I mean? They don't necessarily spend their whole day on the computer. You know what I mean? Following the latest things. We're still seeing entrepreneurs come through the door and interested in developing products and kind of start their businesses. I would say that for some of the folks that were here that were really sort of focused on specialty food products, like their market has really dropped significantly because people just aren't out there buying those products, or a lot of their sales were through restaurants that are now closed. So yeah, I would say that the job creation is still ringing true. It's just shifting, and we're still trying to figure out how. We're still working on the Yellow Barn project too.
You are. That's good. Is that, what stage is that in, John?
We're in final cost estimating and fundraising right now.
Good. Other folks have perspective on some of the challenges that farms are facing, and Eloise, it'd be interesting to hear from you. What your perspective is connecting to Pete's in terms of the key issues on the farm, and what you hear from other farmers around in terms of the pressures they may be under.
Yeah, I guess for our farm, it's been pretty good. We've seen an increase of like CSA from maybe 300 to 800 in a few weeks. So
from 300 to 800?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had to, and I'm talking, I don't know all the detail, but yeah, it's been a logistic, figure out new system, and yeah, it's been challenging. And and the farm stand too has been a lot busier than the past. So we might have lost all the restaurant things, but it kind of picked up other with the CSA with the farm stand, and so we had to quickly turn around and start growing more food. And I know for other farmers, it's maybe smaller size, it's been more difficult with them, more like restaurant account and things like that. But and I don't know so much about the other farmers, but for us, it's been pretty, yeah, it's been good for the business. Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
to have to turn around that and grow more food because the market's going to need it is.
Yeah. Basically, we could sell as much as we can grow. Yeah.
I did have a discussion. We had Mateo Kaler from Jasper Hill on the call. Mateo described the fact that one day the bottom dropped out of their market because all the restaurants were closed. And the next day they started getting email orders, and they started getting orders through their website, and their online calls for their products went up 300%. But they're not used to cutting cheese and mailing it. You know, it's just not, that's not their business really. And so in a matter of a week or two, they had to transform their business to meet the new market conditions. And it feels like there's a lot of that kind of transformation going on. Does anyone have any other stories of farms that are shifting that way based on new markets and new opportunities?
I could speak to our farm. So we grow vegetables and mushrooms and beef. And the mushrooms were the big thing because in the spring, we were just acting as if we didn't know farmers markets would happen or if restaurants would open.
Hey, Chris, could you tell us where your farm is and if it has a name?
Craftsberry, Wild Branch Valley Farm. I'm one of the little farms in Craftsberry. So we right off the bat knew that like most of our restaurant accounts were not going to happen. Even the restaurants that stayed open aren't necessarily buying high-end pricey mushrooms, but we had them coming. So our pivot was more like we had to get a drying situation up where we could dry those mushrooms in order to preserve them for a longer time of selling them. And also we started a specific CSA, just a mushroom CSA. We got 30 members. And then I also do plant sales, and I wasn't sure if the farmer's market would fly or not. So I did a pre-order plant sale. That actually is something I would definitely probably keep now that I've done it, because I had to learn I had to make a website and all these things I had resisted for a long time. But we did pivot. I mean, our farmers markets are probably at 50%. Like, I think that the little farmers are finding it a much more challenging environment, even though people that come out really want to support the local farms. It's just there's a whole lot less of them. We also got really creative, but on our scale, we found a way to be successful at certain aspects. And I come home from farmers market with a whole lot more food than I ever had. So.
No kidding, you're not selling as much.
No.
And
both are, because I sell all my veggies to farmers markets, and the farmers markets I attend are probably at about 50%.
Yeah, just the social distancing and the norms of people staying away from events and so forth is like, you look at the Montpelier farmers market and it's just sort of an odd, staggered process, not the crowd effect that there used to be of people shopping in an excited way.
Yeah, we experienced 2 farmers market. It's Eloise again for Peace Green. Yeah, our sales are a lot less at farmers market than in the past.
But you're still doing it? It's still worth doing, or is it?
I'm not sure if it's worth doing it, but we want to stay in the loop. We're afraid that if we leave for 1 year, it's going to be hard to get back. But yeah, it's so much work for not much. Yeah.
And is it getting better, or is it stable? It's still tough.
Right now it's always the same at this time of the year. The sales start to slow down, but it's even worse this year. Yeah.
I see Angela has her hand up. Angela, do you want to share a thought?
Yeah, that was for the senior meals, which sorry, I don't remember who had that conversation going about that. But I have in my town, a friend of mine is running as the organization for that, and just want to bring it back to the storage issue. That was the biggest issue, like the biggest, but that was a very issue for them with having all these more people request signing up for the meals. And they sent, I can't remember how many, but it was more that it was like a week of the food. Having the store capacity for that, reaching out to different community, other schools and libraries after try to store that. So have a little insight on that, and get back to storage really is a huge issue.
Okay, thank you. Other perspectives on things that are going on now, or we can be shifting into, when you think about the future of the food system and food security, is there more work that needs to happen in your town or in the county, or that you need the state to do to take leadership? Or, Polly's here from Senator Leahy's office. You can even talk about what we need from our congressional delegation. But do people have thoughts on where we need to go in terms of some of the next steps for local, regional, and state action around food systems and food insecurity?
This is Laurel again. I don't have anything specific, but I do want to thank Polly and tell her to thank her boss for all the federal support.
Thanks, Laurel. I'll pass it on.
Yeah, it was definitely helpful.
They're working hard. I understood that at one point, Polly, there was $9 billion at the Agency of Agriculture that they were trying to disperse, and that Leahy's office was fighting for it to go out to small-scale food systems and small farms and so forth, but was in competition with some of the major agricultural interests that wanted it to go to commodities. Do you have any news on how that turned out, or is it still in process?
I sadly am not the right expert for that question. I believe it is still a work in progress. I'd say, the program I work most with is Farmers to Families, and thank you, John, for touching on that. And that's also a work in progress, and something that Senator Leahy's going to be pushing for in the next round of legislation is language directing that program to prioritize local farms, because we feel like the way the USDA has written their regulations is cutting out our local farms. And from the feedback I heard from you folks, that is a big part of the market, and is providing farmers with a valuable market. So we want to continue to have that link. And if we have the opportunity to continue that program, I think what we hear from around the state is that we need a program that links the farms with the charitable food system and actually allows the charitable food system to pay the farms for the goods. There's a lot of donation programs out there, but our farms need to be paid for the work they're doing. So
yeah,
I think
it's not secure food if there's no economic foundation.
Absolutely, and you don't want to create food insecurity among our farmers.
Yeah. Okay. Other perspectives on things that should be done locally, regionally, or at the state level, or even at the federal level to advance this situation. And one of the questions I'd have is, we went into this situation thinking we may be looking at a couple months where our lives are different. We're 6 months in. The prognosis of disease endemism, if you will, is that this could be an ongoing issue for over a year till there is a ubiquitous prevention, or even a longer period in our society where we're dealing with COVID. And other calls we've had people say, well, in this arena, we were forced to plan urgently as fast as we possibly could without any information about what we were planning for or how long or what the outcome would be. There's no clear end date. So that it's like a recipe for anxiety and tension. And we know that a lot of farmers are dealing with a great deal of tension, that dairy farmers we're just looking at some improvement in milk value, and then COVID hits and the bottom drops out of the market again. That the tension there is really deep, that the amount of money that the state has been able to appropriate to answer their needs is a fraction of the losses that they had in 2 months previous and doesn't pay forward to the 2 next months with the challenges. Are there other issues around that anxious situation that farmers are going through and food systems professionals and providers are having to deal with too? Have I overstated the case?
No, I don't think so, Paul. I think that there are a number of farms out there that are having to make pivots, and I think that they're really struggling with, are these short-term pivots or are these long-term pivots? And if they're long-term pivots, do I have the wherewithal to sustain what I'm doing in the short term? And what kind of financial and other infrastructure resources do I need to be able to sustain it for the long term? I think those are like big fundamental questions that a lot of farms are like facing right now. And the answer is like no one really knows for sure. But I think that one thing that people do know, and that what I have heard from many different places and people, is that all of the work that everyone's been doing in food systems in Vermont for the past 10 plus years is now like, revealing itself to be having been incredibly important work, because when you look across the state and you see all of the amazing things that Vermont has done, whether that's, with federal resources, state resources, or private philanthropic resources, or volunteers or donations. I mean, when you look at the combined response, it's like really amazing to see. And I don't know, Zoe, you can like actually like find and name all of them across the state, because some of them are just neighbor to neighbor, interactions, and then others are big, statewide initiatives. So I think, really broadly is like, let's keep investing in food systems.
Yeah, that those past investments teed up a system that was there to respond to this crisis. Are there any gaps between parts of the system or holes in the system that you see, or that?
Well, I mean, we certainly have seen a huge increase in usage of our product delivery service, Farm Connects. We're moving a lot of food, and which is really great to see. We're moving a lot of food between farms. So farms that have farm stands and are in a position to market directly to the public are sourcing other food products that they don't make themselves from other farms, and sort of those natural collaborations are popping up. But I mean, I would say that the distribution services and logistics and infrastructure, there's one thing is just to have trucks on the road. The other is to actually have the systems and procedures and, computer software and, all of the other things that make running that efficient in place. And I think that, it's kind of piecemealed together, and that certainly could be strengthened over time.
Great, thanks. How about on the food delivery for lower income people side of things? Are there gaps still? Are there things that you worry about that need to be fixed up? Or is the system ready to continue at the level it is? Or if things got worse, would the system be resilient and ready to deal with that? Is it really a system, or is it a lot of good things that are happening relatively in a disconnected way.
Paul, can I bring up one food system we haven't spoken about yet tonight?
Sure.
And that's the school meals program. And I hear from different parts of the state the role that has played in promoting food security in our families. And that's one I worry about, what it's going to look like moving into the fall with hybrid systems going from in-person to remote. That system's going to need a lot of support in order to continue feeding kids and also to continue delivering to families where it is doing that.
Yeah, so a lot of kids are getting summer meal programs now. And is that system strong, and is it ubiquitous, and is it systematic, or is it anecdotal? And I don't know the answers to that question.
Yeah, I think the answer is no. It's not strong.
No.
It's not strong. I mean, yeah, universal school meals. You know, in the best of times, we need it all of the time. The other thing that I want to mention too is that I don't think it's been brought up here is the SNAP benefits, and that's something that we have to really keep that system strong, or keep that program strong, because people can go to the grocery store. If you got SNAP benefits, you don't have to worry about trying to get food from here and there and all over the place. It's already in the grocery stores, and they can go in and use their benefits card there.
Yeah, and there have been a number of attempts to weaken that program.
I know for the farm stand in the past at Pidwin, we always been self-service, but this year because of COVID, we decided that it would be safer to have a staff person. And because of that, we're now able to do farm to family coupon, and it's been really great. Yeah.
Oh, good. Huh. So you felt like you needed someone in the store because of safety of people just wandering around getting their own food, Louise?
Yeah, and just like not hand sanitizing and too many people at the same time in the store, and yeah, mostly for those reasons.
We haven't really talked about protocols, but I'm sure protocols are a nightmare for John and probably for a number of the rest of you in terms of the number of times people have to take gloves off and on, or sanitize their hands, or keep 6 feet from their best buddies who step into the shop. It's really challenging, huh? Any other thoughts about work that should happen at the regional or state level before we turn a corner? We're going to give people on the visiting team an opportunity to share some reflections based on what they've heard at the end here, before we go back to the whole group to close the section. Anyone else have thoughts on challenges? I'm not sure who's here from the Heaths. We haven't heard from you. And 1843, I think it's Heather Lundstrom. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Heather?
No, I'm actually just here really to listen at this point. I'm a little too new to add anything constructive, I think.
Yeah,
but thank you.
I see Ivy smiling from who's probably thinking, don't call on me.
We're in the same, I think we're in the same boat.
Yeah, I share in that. One thing I did want to bring up, but again, I'm not educated enough, I think, to speak cogently, but on the topic of 3 Squares Vermont or SNAP benefits, Crop Cash, the Crop Cash program currently is tripling EBT dollars. And I think that is something that really needs to be strongly encouraged. Use of it's great for families who are enrolled in 3 Squares Vermont to access nutritious food. It's great for farmers. It's great for the local economy. So really kind of harkening home on that.
What is Crops for Cash?
Yeah, so Crop Cash is a program that was developed through our NOFA Vermont. I think it's been kind of going on since 2015. And really it's a a double value coupon program for people with 3 Squares Vermont benefits. And in normal times, 30 to 40 markets would be accepting. Any market that accepts EBT would also encourage crop cash. And really what that means is, if someone goes to the market vendor and swipes their EBT card for $10, they're gonna get tokens for that. But what crop cash does is double that dollar, every dollar up to $10. So 10 EBT dollars gives someone $10 in crop cash, and now they have $20 to spend at the market. Right now, it's a doubling of crop cash. So $10 of EBT, $20 in crop cash.
Great. Okay, thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other last reflections on things that should be done before we go back to our visiting team to share some reflections? Okay, Polly, would you like to go first from Senator Leahy's office and share any thoughts or themes that you've heard in this conversation?
I'd be happy to. I think when we talk about charitable food access or just food for any of us, personal preference plays a really big role. And I think we heard that in this conversation with Laurel talking about how the good atmosphere at the Veggie Van Gogh, and also Chris talking about people wanting to go to their really hyper local food shelves. They're the food shelves that are in their towns, and how the atmosphere around these food access points can really help dispel the stigma attached to them. And Paul, you made that interesting comment about the number of people accessing farmers to families and how that's might be dispelling the stigma a little bit too. And there seems to be kind of this magic around uniting local food with charitable food, and that making it maybe more dignified and easier for people and Vermonters and our neighbors to access. So I hope moving out of this, as we're building that link between our food system in this amazing agricultural state and our charitable food system, that's something we learn, we take with us, and we use as a best practice to help whoever needs to access food to get that access. Also, in thinking about how do we link our production systems to end users, and especially people who are food insecure, one thing that didn't come up, but I was thinking about through all of this, is if there's any knowledge barrier on how to use some of these produce. And I think we assume that sometimes there is, and maybe there isn't, but I'm hoping UVM and some of our research partners are going to look more into that, and certainly would be interested in the group's feedback on that at another time. And we heard a lot about that infrastructure piece, both in allowing our farms to pivot to different types of markets, but also allowing our food shelves to serve, maybe increase their capacity, serve more of the neighbors. And it really, for me, from a federal standpoint, it really points to the need for a kind of micro grant program for infrastructure that's available to farms and ag businesses. And I think USDA has great resources out there, but sometimes it's that the freezer or the cooler, that really tangible investment piece that some of their programs struggle to reach. So I know that's something that Senator Leahy and his ag staff are thinking about in terms of programs to create. But this conversation has really pointed that storage and infrastructure is really a need.
Yeah,
so that was
too bad they don't still have earmarks, Polly, because they could earmark some money into the Working Lands Enterprise program just to do storage and refrigerators and so forth, and you'd have a distribution system for creative entrepreneurs all over the state.
We'd love to do that, but we're going to use all our creativity to find a non-earmark way of getting it done. How about that?
Yeah, you're good at that, yes.
Get better every year.
Did you have more? I didn't mean to interrupt you, Polly.
Well, I was just just thinking about resources, I wanted to end on SNAP. It's such a powerful program. I think we have more people that can sign up and can benefit from that who aren't aware that it's available to them. So anything we can do at the community level to raise awareness of SNAP is certainly worth doing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Polly. Jenny, did you have anything you wanted to share in terms of an observation?
I just have never really thought about the storage piece of all of this, and hearing that really opened my eyes to, I know a lot of farmers who sell, but I never considered the storage piece. So it's really interesting that as farmers are pivoting, that is a need that I never even thought of before.
Great, thank you. Sarah Danley, do you want to share some reflections on what you heard and how it may connect with other places?
Yeah, definitely. Like Polly and Jenny, I really heard the two main themes being like the storage, distribution, infrastructure piece of it, and then the second theme, the question of how can we enable the charitable food system to help pay farmers for the food that they're growing. To the second point about helping the charitable food system pay farmers for the food, I'm really happy that there's been such focus on SNAP, because I would also just reiterate how important a program it is. To the point about like getting the word out about the triple in crop cash matching, we're also really hoping that some sort of public push around that could go some way toward reducing the stigma of folks using that program, because it is so significant for the farms as well, and the farms do need that support at farmers markets. And messaging, we're hoping that messaging around like participating in it is good to help your area farms will help reduce some of that stigma around participating in these systems. Just another program I would mention on that note is the Vermont Food Bank's Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program. And I think they get a little bit, and they did receive more funding for that recently. I think they often get a little bit more attention for the large bulk purchases that the food bank itself does from large scale farms. But a part of that program is actually running a mini grant program where they will make mini grants to individual food shelves to buy small amounts of food from small scale farms in their area. That's a really nice way to help farms get into the program without limiting it to only farms that can produce pallets and pallets of the same thing like the food bank itself needs to buy. So I think applications for that might have closed for this season. I'm not sure, but either way, it would be open again for new food shelves to receive grants in the next round. And then just quickly in terms of the infrastructure piece, a couple of ideas that came up. One is the question of slaughter, and there is some work going on in slaughterhouses, but another alternative system that people in my area that I live in are certainly talking about is on-farm slaughter, at least as a temporary stopgap measure for when slaughterhouses are full. And there are certainly some heavy limitations on that. It's not the silver bullet for the slaughterhouses being over capacity, but if there's ways to get the word out to farms that some of their needs could be met through on-farm slaughter, rural Vermont has been doing a lot of advocacy, both in making that program more flexible and also for educating farmers about what currently is possible. In terms of transportation, we had some great examples in this conversation of bringing food to the people. One really great example of bringing people to the food is over in the Grand Isle County. It's called CIDER, which stands for Champlain Islanders Developing Essential Resources. And they run a program, basically just a van that collects folks and brings them for shopping trips. And they've managed to adapt that to be safe in COVID too, actually. And then finally, in terms of storage space, I do know, and I don't know much about this, but I do know that Hunger Free Vermont, I believe through Hannah Carpino, is doing a food storage space inventory in Lamoille County in an attempt to do some, I think, matchmaking and solve the storage space problem. So that might be something that would be worth replicating in this county as well.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Sarah, when you talked about on-farm slaughter, do you have a list at Farm to Plate of all the folks that do that work in a way that people could access it?
I don't know that we do, but I really, rural Vermont is really dedicating a lot of time to help education around this as an option. So I think reaching out to rural Vermont would be a way to get that information.
Okay, thank you. Eric, do you have a closing reflection?
Not really at this point.
Okay, well, thanks. So, you know, it strikes me that that part of our challenge in Vermont is that we haven't really figured out solutions around dairy. So a lot of very little of the conversation talked about the bigger challenges that dairy farms are facing, which are long-term systems challenges and aren't really amenable to, you know, you can't change your market for fluid milk on a dime. You can't change the way that you're paid for it. You can't control the price of your milk. And so I guess part of what I'd say is my heart is really with the dairy farm families that are facing this crisis, and I think we all need to continue to step up for them. And I'm glad the state has invested in money to connect to fill some of their losses, but this is an ongoing challenge. The other thing I would say is just you know, Caledonia County is in some ways a small place, and this is a fairly small forum, but it's pretty powerful place too. The ag entrepreneurs and innovators in the county, from Pete to Jasper Hill to Hill Farmstead to, you know, any number of food-related businesses that have grown in the kingdom, to the country stores like the Craftsbury Market and others that are playing such an important sort of pivot role in terms of creative agricultural development, and then also working to meet the needs of the crisis. You know, it may seem like this is all kind of dark and that it's and that these are little steps in a way, but seen from the outside, there's something really profound about what everyone up in the kingdom has accomplished. That you're really providing amazing leadership in a tough time. And you know, we as Vermonters have gone through a number of tough times before. We tend to think, when we think about the future, that we don't anticipate a war. We don't anticipate the kind of cataclysmic challenges that the 21st or the 20th century went through. But when you think about what we're going through right now, we'll look back on this as a historic era where people pulled together and did some amazing things to help their neighbors and to move forward. And so I'm just very honored to be part of the conversation with you guys. You're doing work that's really heroic for the future of your communities. It may be the natural thing for you to be doing, but it's really pretty remarkable from the outside. So deeply appreciate it. Jenny Lavoie, who's our master technician here, is showing us on the chat what to do next. Essentially, we get to, do you want to tell us what to do,
Sure.
Jenny?
So similarly, how you arrived at this session, what you'll want to do is go to that chat, copy the link for the closing session, and then you can leave this session, then paste that new link into your browser, and that will bring us to the closing session.
So you copy it before you close out.
Yes, that's the key.
Okay, we'll see you all. I guess we're all done, unless anyone has a last point of inspiration that they'd want to share. All right, so let's end this call, and we'll jump back to the larger group, and hope to see you all there in a minute. Thanks. Well, isn't it a miracle when technology works so smoothly? Appreciate the support of all our technical team here. And Margaret, you're on so that you can let everyone in?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, thank you. So not a huge discussion on agriculture, but a really interesting one, and a great cross-section of leadership engaged in that conversation. We want to just take a couple minutes to debrief a little bit on the two topics on the table, the cultural and civic institutions conversation, and then the local food systems and food access conversation. And I'm going to ask Ben Doyle, who facilitated the cultural and civic institutions conversation to share some reflections about what he heard and kind of what some maybe things that it added up to. So Ben, the floor is yours.
Sure, thanks. It was a really quick 2 hours. It was really a wonderful conversation, a great group, and clearly a lot of people who care deeply about their community. I think, if I had to summarize the major ideas that I came out, I saw one, again, how critical our cultural and civic institutions are to the community in defining who we are as a region. And that was a theme in and of itself, this desire to really think about the kingdom, as a kind of region and how we fit into that statewide perspective. So the desire to work regionally to support these institutions. But I also saw, in addition to that passion for what we have, what I thought was a real enthusiasm for the willingness to be bold and reimagine our cultural and civic organizations, both in the way that they coordinate with one another, that they partner with one another. What I wrote down is a willingness to rethink and reimagine how we fund, who we include in our kind of civic infrastructure or cultural institutions, how people are invited into the circle to participate in civic life, and who leads those organizations, or what does the construct of leadership that we have right now, how can that even be reimagined to, again, if the goal is we all want to come out of this with a more equitable economic recovery, we really need to think about those kinds of things. And then maybe perhaps on a more kind of concrete level is just maybe formalizing, looking for ways to formalize partnerships and coordination between different organizations, ultimately to kind of cut down on both human capital and financial drain to maintain our cultural and civic infrastructure, right? And so, how can we share buildings? How can we share systems that make that kind of infrastructure more sustainable? And then on a really granular level, Paul, really talking about how are we paying for the physical infrastructure that we're going to need to be resilient coming out of COVID, to prepare for future pandemics. And really what we're talking about here is like HVAC systems, right? How are schools going to pay for that? How are all of our public buildings going to pay for that? And so those are real, we went from some really bold willingness to think big to very specific action items. And I think a lot of those I know that they were captured in the notes, and I think there's some great stuff there for the task force to look at. So I just want to thank the group for what I thought was a really good conversation.
Thank you so much, Ben. And Nick Kramer, who's capturing these notes and bringing them together, will summarize at the end how we'll be back in touch with you with notes and links and so forth. I'll start to summarize the conversation on agricultural, where we are with the food system and food insecurities in Caledonia County. There are limits and there are barriers and there are challenges around storage, the need for slaughter facilities, the need for distribution coordination. There are some really good work going on around food aggregation with the Center for an Ag Economy, with Green Mountain Farm Direct. There's some fascinating different levels of food that's being distributed at the very local level, neighbor to neighbor, by Country Store and Craftsberry as partners with Pete's. And it's sort of like things have sprung up in lots of different ways with food shelves and with distributed meals, with Veggie Van Go working with the hospital, transportation being another of the big challenges. But with all that, there's still hunger, and there's still, as someone mentioned, it's not always just hunger. It's sometimes the inability to figure out where you're going to find the dollars to afford nutritious, local, and good food for you. That all of this spikes with the loss of the $600 additional payments that were going out for unemployment. And we also talked about the pivots that farms have gone through, where Pete's Greens went from a CSA with 300 and some odd customers to suddenly there's 800 people who want to get involved in the CSA. They're looking for food security that way. And how the market challenge of shifting into new places is really difficult. So there's lots of farms and places that have gone through short-term pivots, but are these also long-term pivots, or will markets come back? And the uncertainty in the marketplace, which is sort of fundamental. We rush to plan, we rush to organize, and yet we don't really know what we're organizing for or for how long, because the market is changing so rapidly. And that leads to anxiety and tension. And certainly the dairy farm community is feeling that extremely. They can't control the price of milk. They were seeing a little bit of a bump back before COVID hit, after some really tough years. And then COVID hits. The amount of money that's going to farmers to fill back losses from the state isn't going to meet their back losses, and it doesn't change the situation that they're probably facing additional losses now. So really tough situation there. There's a lot more work to be done. The food distribution system, people described it as in lots of ways, and the creativity and good work that people are doing, but maybe it's not really a full system yet. And I think that John from CAE really summarized it well at the end, where he said, you know, we know we're not done, but when you think about all the creative work that's been done all over the state of Vermont in the last few years, you know, and you got to say the Center for an Ag Economy was a flagpole of that work, really raising the idea of the food system renaissance in Vermont, that all that work has contributed to Vermont getting to a place where we're much more ready than we would have been, much more organization, much more distribution, much more localized response folks in place. And thank goodness that that's true, because people have stepped up. My closing reflection on the ag system is in Caledonia County is, you know, what an amazing county it is, with the agripreneurs, the strength of small farms, the strength of dairy still, the leadership of the Center for an Ag Economy and the hospital and others doing such great work town by town to support their neighbors. Caledonia County is a small county in Vermont relatively, but it's certainly a leader in a lot of this work. And you set a high mark, and you also set a great example of sort of patriotism for place, patriotism for the kingdom, strength in working together and building a stronger fabric for the future of Vermont. So, you know, good on you all. Good on agriculture, food systems leadership. That's my summation. I know I missed a lot, but let's turn to Nick. And we've got all this information. We've got video on this. We've got some notes that Nick's going to be distributing. Tell us what comes next, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So as Paul mentioned a couple minutes ago, we've had Eric and Janelle. Thank you to both of you guys for taking some, what I'm sure will be very detailed notes to capture these conversations. As soon as we get those back, we'll work to compile those, the contact information for anyone in the visiting team, and links to recordings of each breakout session in case you were in one and you were curious what was really the details of what was described in the other. A shout out to Kingdom Access TV for making that possible. They were with us tonight in recording. So we'll compile all of that into one document, a publicly accessible online PDF, which we will email back to everyone who registered, along with the link to the local solutions and community action team website. I'm posting that, and nope, that's not the right button. I'm posting both the link to the governor's local solutions and community action team best practices website, where they're compiling some of these ideas that we've been gathering for the last couple months from communities across the state, and a survey, which will also be in the follow-up email in case there were ideas that if you're falling asleep tonight and you think, oh, shoot, I should have mentioned this. This is another way to capture some feedback, and please feel free to forward to anyone who wasn't able to make it tonight. So I think that's everything. Paul, help me out if I'm forgetting anything.
That sounds good to me, Nick. That's why I put you in charge. I just want to thank the steering committee. Really great to have the team that framed this session. I want to thank Kathleen from the collaborative, Dave from the NVDA for your leadership. I see so many other people who are doing tremendous work for the future of the kingdom, Tara, Tricia, John, and all of you. In Vermont, we are stronger together. There's a fabric that we're weaving even when we're not aware of it. The work that one person does for the common good connects to everybody else, and we are strong, and we will manage COVID, and we will build a better Vermont because of COVID. We will respond. And it's a great honor to be partners with so many of you and to see you tonight, and for you to give us a couple of hours to contribute to this process. Deeply appreciate it. Deeply appreciate what you do for the good of your community, and onward and upward for a stronger Vermont. Thanks a million for being with us. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you all.